Hi everyone, my name is Abby Guinness and I look after Spring Harvest, and today I'm talking to the wonderful Emma Borquaye. She is many wonderful things, but she is also the host of Another Mother, a My Spring Harvest podcast, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. So, hi Emma.
Hello.
Now you just have to sit there slightly awkwardly while I talk about you just for a moment. Emma is mum to two awesome little ones, Ezra and Hallie, and she's now completed 2 seasons of the podcast Another Mother, which is 20 awesome episodes. Now, there's already been more than 10,000 listens. They are amazing interviews and some absolute gold parenting advice. It's all still there on YouTube for you to find if you haven't discovered it yet. I think parents love to talk about parenting, and this is because it's funny and bonkers and so difficult so much of the time. So we all want to soak up all the advice we can get. I'm in the midst of all the joys and fears of parenting as well. So I'm really excited to speak to Emma. And actually, this is the first time we've properly spoken. And we're going to flip the script. The interviewer becomes the interviewee. So I'm going to make it as difficult for you as I possibly can.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Okay, I think I'm ready.
I'm going to go straight to the point. Have you, after 20 episodes, have you got a favourite episode of the podcast, or is that like asking if you have a favourite child?
I'm going to say it's like asking if you've got a favourite child. No, I don't.
Of course.
I don't know if I've got a favourite episode, but there are like bits of every episode or a lot of the episodes where I'm like, oh my gosh, that was my favorite, and then something else will happen, I'll be like, no, that was my favorite. And there's just so many like amazing conversations that have been had, and like loads of things pop to mind all the time just in my day-to-day life. I'll be like driving down the street and then just think of something random that like Joshua Luke Smith said, or I'll be like doing the kids' lunches and then think about something that Anna Smith said, or I'll just be, I don't know, and it has become kind of a part of my life. Like all of these conversations, it's like conversations with friends and how they just pop to mind at different times. So yeah, I've just been so grateful to have all of these conversations. But yeah, it'd be very hard to pick a favorite.
Couldn't possibly pick just one. I love that you just mentioned gratefulness there, because being grateful for it, because that's the next thing I was going to say is that we're thinking about thankfulness in particular this month. What are you thankful for in this process of recording the podcast? What have been the things you've enjoyed most?
Yeah, do you know, I think for me, I think as a parent of 2 small children, you don't really get much time to do anything for yourself, especially if you're also a working parent. And so I think I've actually been quite thankful that I've been able to put this down as work so that I've had time to have these conversations, because they're conversations that I just want to have anyway. Like I would love to grab time with all of these people that I've got to speak to, call them up or sit down for coffee with them. So doing it in this kind of podcast format has actually enabled me to really like carve out that time to have those conversations that have enriched my life so much. So I just feel so grateful to have had this opportunity to even have all of these conversations and to record them, so that now I can listen back and just be reminded of that wisdom and the challenges and just all the amazing things that have been shared. So yeah, I would say that's something I've been very grateful for, but it's also a bit of a note to self that I probably shouldn't just like make things work to actually do something for myself. I should probably carve out times for those nice conversations anyway.
Yeah, hard to do though, isn't it? Easier said than done.
Yeah, exactly. But no, yeah, I'm really, really grateful for just, everybody's time and all of the wisdom that they've poured into sharing what they've shared in these conversations.
Yeah. Well, would you say there's any particular pieces of advice that have been really sticky, like stuff that you can go, oh yeah, I've actually changed the way I do things because of that? Some of the best tips, if you like.
Yeah, do you know, I think there's been a lot. I remember there was a conversation with Anna Smith where one thing that she said, and I'm probably going to like phrase it wrong, so don't quote her as saying this, but she was saying something along the lines of like, she's a better parent when she's around other people. So sometimes when you're just feeling stressed and overstimulated and overwhelmed, it's actually like good to just get out the house and like be around other people, and you're probably going to be a bit more patient with your kids.
You have to be, because you're being watched.
Exactly. And I just think it's those kind of things that just remind you, like, we don't need to be perfect. We don't need to have it all together all the time. But there are little things that we can do to just really help ourselves and give ourselves a bit of like a mental break. Just get out the house, be around other people. So that always kind of pops to mind if I'm just having one of those days where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I think like when in the conversation with Zoe, where she was speaking about baby loss and grief and that kind of journey that she went on, and how she kind of brought her children, or her daughter at the time, along on that journey, and wasn't afraid to kind of show her the grief that she was experiencing and the emotion that she experienced. And I think for me, that was the first time I'd really heard something like that, because I had always thought you need to like shield your children from any negative emotions, just keep them in their happy bubble. But she was saying how like actually allowing your children to see and experience the whole range of emotions, positive and negative, is actually a gift to their life. And some of the really hard things that we experience, if we can share that with our children in a responsible way and as a parent to them through that, it can bless their lives so much. And I've always remembered that. And I thought, it's not something to be afraid of when we've got kind of strong emotions or we feel sad, but we're able to communicate that to our children in a good way that can actually really enrich their lives. So yeah, that's been advice that I think of quite often, actually.
Yeah, I love that. It's great. And I guess that's kind of empowering every day as well. If you wake up thinking, oh, I don't know if I can face it today, and just being honest with them. Yeah. We're talking about emotions there. I was going to say emotions as a parent, I think, can be quite delicate. Like I quite often find myself a bit nearer the edge than I ever used to be. So what sorts of things have made you emotional during recording? Have there been moments where you thought, oh gosh, I've got to pull myself together now?
Oh my gosh, I am a crier. So I cry at everything. I cry at happy things. I cry at sad things. I just cry all the time. I love to cry. But no, I think there was an episode that I did with Yasmin, and she was speaking about being a young mum and just reflecting on this community that she had around her that just really like held her through that time when she felt quite judged or looked down on by a lot of people. But there were certain people that just really walked with her through that. And I remember feeling like really emotional on her behalf, because she got emotional and it made me emotional, which is always the way with me. If someone cries, I'm going to cry. But yeah, I do remember feeling quite emotional about that. And then the most recent episode that I recorded, which was the last episode in the season 2, I was just sharing a bit of my own personal kind of life from this past year, which has been a really challenging time. And I got a bit emotional in that one. But
understandably,
you just got to let it out. I'm all for the emotion.
It sounds like, I mean, obviously the things we go through are challenging. Do we, what am I trying to say? Do you find those emotional things, is that challenging in itself, or are there other challenges? Like, is facing emotions challenging, or is it the practicalities that are challenging and the logistics of, right, I've got to carve out this time, I need to sort childcare, what have been some of the challenges over the last couple of years?
Within recording the podcast?
In recording the podcast,
Yeah, so I would say one of the challenges with the podcast is that I think we could talk for hours about all the things to do with parenting, and like there is so much more detail that I would love to go into with all the guests, because so many of them have got such interesting lives. And if you know me personally, you know that I've got questions for days. Like if we sit down, I'll be like, tell me about this, tell me about that, oh, tell me about this thing, tell me about, and I can go on a million tangents and just ask loads of questions, because I think I'm just nosy, to be honest, or curious.
It's not a bad trait.
Yeah, we'll say curious, it's a bit more positive. But yeah, no, so I think just knowing that, I guess in a podcast format, you do have to consider the listener and maybe just not talk for like 4 hours. This isn't a Joe Rogan podcast. So I was like trying to keep it concise, but yeah, I would say that was a challenge. And then, oh my gosh, yeah, the technical stuff. What on earth? Like, why is it so hard to set up a microphone and a camera? I just find like every single time there's something that goes wrong, and I don't know why. I've done this like 20 times. But there's always a challenge. There'll always be something where I like start recording and then realize my microphone switched off or something's gone wrong. But yeah, we're getting there. We're learning.
You made it. You wouldn't know. When you're watching it, everything seems very slick. It's all very well. It's well put together and really interesting. I'm imagining some stuff must have ended up on the cutting room floor. Like you say, you could talk for hours. Has there been a lot of stuff that you've had to cut? I'm sure there's probably some good stuff that you've had to cut, but has anything really terrible happened that you're like, oh, I've got to cut that before we send that live?
Probably nothing like too terrible, but I would say if there was like a compilation of all of the introductions that I've recorded, that would just be like a ridiculously long, terrible video, because I just start every podcast. I'm like, oh no, wait, I need to start again. And for some reason, the beginning just doesn't work for me. Like I just don't get in the flow straight away. So the poor person who's editing it will always be like, oh my gosh, because I'm like, just edit that bit out. I'm so sorry. Like cut that bit. And I'll say, oops, I need to start again. And I'll just do the intro like 30 times. But no, in terms of the general conversations, we don't actually cut much out at all. And I think that is because I really wanted, like my heart for this podcast is that it is literally a conversation that I want to have anyway, that we're sitting down having, and we're just recording it for everybody else to also get to listen to and enjoy. So I wanted to keep it kind of as natural and flowy as possible. And sometimes in the like tangent moments is where you get some of the best gold, because people are just really speaking from the heart. So yeah, there's not been like there's not really any scandals or anything that we've got hidden in the edits. So yeah.
Terrible bloopers, things people owned up to that then they went, no, you can't put that in.
Yeah, some exclusives. Imagine.
Well, I want to say thank you for all your work on the podcast, because it is a lot of work, and it is just fantastic to listen to. So thank you for all that you've put into it, and your heart and soul and honesty. And for those of you who haven't listened to it yet or watched it, then why not? Where have you been? Get onto YouTube and watch those interviews, because they are really helpful for parents at all stages of parenting. It's always good to talk to someone, isn't it, about how they're seeing it and how they view it. And there'll always be so many different opinions, but I think all of them are valuable to hear and consider what we think about them.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to talk just a little bit now about something slightly different, because we are approaching Christmas. It's the Christmas season. It feels like it's approaching Christmas for weeks, doesn't it? We're always approaching Christmas. But I want to talk to you a little bit and get some of your advice. So kids love presents. Well, I know yours are still small, but they've probably already figured out that they like to unwrap things, and that they might be able to point out what they want and like to receive. How do you think we can help our kids approach Christmas with a bit of a different attitude, maybe flip that attitude and talk about giving and generosity and thankfulness? And have you got any tips or hints that you've thought through about Christmas yet?
Oh, well, yes. Firstly, I love Christmas, like absolutely obsessed. It is the most wonderful time of the year. I'm wearing my red jumper just to be extra Christmassy. But yeah, no, so I think my children, they're fairly young. So Ezra, who is now 5, I would say this is probably the first Christmas that we're coming into that he really understands like the whole lead up, the whole theme, like everything that goes into Christmas. So I have been thinking about this a little bit, and we kind of have done it throughout the year when it's been friends' birthdays and stuff. But one thing that we try and focus on is the idea of like thinking about a person and thinking what they might like. Like, what do we know about this person? What toys do they like? What games do they like to play? What kind of personality are they? And really making it like an exciting thing to choose a gift for someone. Because then I think it becomes less about this like tokenistic, like, oh, you've got to give them something. But actually it becomes an expression of love for that person, and you've thought about it, and it's not about a list that they've given you saying I want this, that and the other. It's actually an expression of like, oh, I think you would like this. And they're the presents that I love to receive the most. Like if somebody's just thought of me and thought I would like it, even if I don't really like it, I think oh, it's so nice that you thought about that, because that is what it's all about, isn't it? It's about that. It's an act of love, isn't it? It's receiving that love from that person. So yeah, I think really kind of getting excited for the kids to understand this concept that we can think of our friends and our family, and we can think about what they might like more than what we can think about kind of writing our own list of demands of like, I want this and I want that. Although I'm sure that will probably happen in some way anyway. But yeah, I think definitely focusing on that idea of generosity, and even the fact that it's Jesus's birthday. And that's something that we talk about quite a lot. It's like how exciting Jesus is, like letting us all share in his birthday. So we all get to give each other presents, and the gift that we can give to Jesus on his birthday, because he's not physically like present with us, we can give him our worship and our dancing and our praise and our prayers, like all those good things. So I think, it's like helping our children to have their mind on what it's actually about, but also partaking in the fun of Christmas as well.
Yeah, I love that. The gift being an expression of love. It's quite a simple thing, isn't it? But so easy to forget when you are kind of caught up in the moment. I know we have to be careful what we say, because you never know who might be watching the internet. But where do you stand on Father Christmas?
Oh, I thought he was going to say something else then. I was like, what are you going to say? Okay, Father Christmas. Oh, this is a controversial one. Okay, so I love the whole idea of everything Christmas. So like, I love putting out the carrot and the mince pie, all that kind of stuff. But I think what I've tended to do with my children in terms of how we speak about it, we speak about Father Christmas as like a character. So the same way you've got like Spider-Man, they're like, I don't know, do they believe Spider-Man is a real person? I don't think they do. Like, I think they like...
I think my smallest one does, but maybe not the others.
I don't know, but I'm like, we have all of these characters, don't we, on TV, and we can kind of believe in them in the sense of like, oh, we know their character, like they've got this superpower and they can do this and that. But then as you get older, you don't really feel like, oh, like I was led to believe that Spider-Man was real. You're like, no, who's a character? And as you get older, your mind kind of develops and you realize that certain things are characters and certain things are real. So I feel like I would speak about Father Christmas in that kind of way. Be like, Father Christmas is like the character of Christmas, but it's all about Jesus. But Father Christmas is the character of like giving gifts and, I don't know, riding on a sleigh with some reindeers that fly. Because also you go
it's
to
tricky,
the
isn't
park
it?
and you see the reindeers and you're like, why aren't they flying?
I know we've watched a few Christmas films over the last few Christmases, and I've thought, this is bonkers. They all tell a slightly different story, and it's actually really confusing. And all the people in your life tell a slightly different story, and there's lots of different just ways of looking at it. That's why I was interested to hear your thoughts.
It's also, as well, like I think Father Christmas is like, I don't know, I think it needs to be a character that is so like interchangeable, because really just having like the big white man with a big white beard doesn't work for all families. Like if you're not a white family and then you've got Father Christmas coming to your family Christmas and it's your granddad, he's not going to necessarily be a white man with a big white beard. And then you don't want to have that kind of concept of like who is allowed to be Father Christmas and who isn't. So I think having that idea that like it's just a character and we dress up as the character and we have fun with the character makes it kind of something that everybody gets to play a part in, and it doesn't become too kind of like rigid and like, no, that doesn't really look like Father Christmas, because it's just a bit of nonsense really, isn't it?
Well, he stands for good things though, doesn't he, in terms of generosity. And like you said, that if you see in gifts as an act of love, then I mean, I love the story of, Saint Nicholas, where Father Christmas comes from, that this is a person who was generous and wanted to express the love of God and wanted children to have toys. And so I kind of embrace it from that point of view. This is actually a way of expressing God's love to others by being generous and giving gifts, which is, I would actually have loved to tell that story from the beginning to my children, but I've been forbidden by my husband. So I'm not allowed to tell that one just yet, that he was a real person. But we've moved on. But we'll get there eventually, I'm sure.
We'll get there. Do you do Elf on the Shelf?
I feel like that would be a step too much for my sanity. So no, we haven't embraced it yet.
Yeah, I've not done it, but I was like, should I do it this year? I don't know. I'm deciding.
So one of the things that we say in our house quite a lot is that Father Christmas knows the rules of the house. So, there are some kids who are a bit, I think actually one of mine was a little bit like, I don't want him to come into my bedroom. Like, I don't want a stranger coming into my room in the night. And I'm like, Fair play. Yeah, I can see that. So we've talked about the fact that Father Christmas knows the rules of the house and he understands how things work in our house. So he knows that we're not allowed a Nintendo Switch in our house, so he won't buy you one. uh, so, so my last question along these lines is what's your hope or your prayer for your kids this Christmas? What would you really hope that they'll take from it or experience?
I think for my own children, I guess as a family, it's been quite a challenging year, quite a different year for us. So I guess just as it's the end of the year, you just would love it to end with like so much peace and so much joy, and for your kids to just feel so surrounded by family and just loved and cared for. So yeah, I know that they kind of get to experience that most of the time anyway, but I think Christmas is such a special time, especially with family coming together, hanging out with all their cousins and having all that fun. So yeah, I just hope that they really do have just a beautiful time together with others and see the value in this like beautiful family that we've got and our church family. And yeah, I think it's going to be a lovely time.
So great to hear, and I hope and pray with you that that is true for so many, and for all of you watching too, that this will be a season of peace and joy and of not feeling alone, of feeling connected with family and church family and friends and others that you know, and sensing that awe and wonder of God with us as we meet together.